We love when we see gratitude being practiced, don't we? When we see our children practicing it, when we see other people practicing gratitude, we really appreciate it very much. But we don't actually practice it on a daily basis ourselves. But so, you just wonder why that is not happening on a daily basis in our life. And I think it is to do with several things. And one of the things is that it is easy, isn't it, to notice the wrongs and the bad in your life and the life of others, the negative in your workplace, in the society as a whole. We are tended to notice and focus on the negative. And our culture doesn't help us as well, because it encourages us to focus on the negative. All the news media outlet focuses and highlights and talks about the negative, the wrongs, the weaknesses of others, and all kinds of the evil things that's happening in our society, in our world. That is what the news is, they're communicating. So the cultural environment that we're living in doesn't help us to notice and focus on the good. Because of that, it is very hard to cultivate a heart of gratitude and practice gratitude. And I think the second reason is that as the neurologists discover, gratitude is not, noticing the good is not our natural position. It's our default position is to notice the wrongs. So it is easy for us as human beings to focus on the negative rather than the good. So that's why they say that 70% of our thoughts in a day is negative. So it could be about ourselves and about others. And you can imagine what that does to our well-being and our relationship with others. I think the Israelites are a good example for that. Throughout their journey from Egypt to Canaan, life was full of complaint, and God was very offended by that attitude, that practice. Despite His goodness, His generosity, and what He have done for them, their attitude, primary focus and attitude was to complain, and that didn't help their relationship with God as well. I think the other reason why we don't practice gratitude as much is because of our definition of gratitude, of the way we understand gratitude. We understand gratitude sometimes as a transactional thing, that we wait for someone to do something for us before we express our gratitude to that person or to the situation. So, and that gives us a very passive approach to gratitude. We wait. It's not actively engaging in noticing the good and expressing our gratitude. I think the other understanding of gratitude, which is really discouraging our practice of gratitude, is considering gratitude as a toxic positivity. It's a very naive approach to life, that you ignore the wrongs, you don't address the wrongs, you become just naively positive. And that is very far away from what gratitude is. But that if you have that perception, then you won't be encouraged to practice gratitude. And I think the third understanding of gratitude that discourages us from practicing is considering gratitude kind of as emotional thing, which doesn't have any logical reason behind it. It doesn't have any kind of backbone behind it. But gratitude is, there is research-based data that tells us its benefit to ourselves and to our relationship with others as well. So the Bible actually encourages us to make the posture of our life in life and our stance in life to be that of gratitude. And there is a foundation for a life of gratitude, biblical foundation that we see. And I think the first one is the fact that the good has primacy in life, the primariness of life. So the good needs to have a primary place in our life and in our mind, in the way we see the world. It is the good that came first, not evil. Evil is an intruder. It came at a later stage. So the coming of evil doesn't discard the presence of the good in the world. God, the creation is, the world is created by a good God. The world is good place. God created it, and He turned around and say, it is good. So the goodness of God is displayed throughout creation and through humanity. In Isaiah chapter 6, we hear the angels crying out, "Holy, holy, holy, the Lord Almighty." And you expect them to say, the heaven is full of God's glory. But that's not what they say. They said, the earth, the whole earth is full of God's glory. So God's glory is His beauty, His wisdom, His goodness, His power. It is displayed throughout the world, throughout creation, throughout humanity. So the good has a primary place, and it has to dictate the way we interact with the world. The good have to have a primary place, and that is the first foundation for a grateful life. If you give a primary place on noticing the good, then cultivating the heart of gratitude becomes easier for us. I think the second foundation is seeing the world as a gift. It's the giftedness of noticing the giftedness of life. In 1 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 7, Paul talks about, asks actually a rhetorical question to the Corinthians. He was saying to them, who made you to be different? And then he says, what is it that you have that you haven't received? And if you have received it, why are you boasting as if you haven't? So the question, it's a question of what is it that you have that you haven't received? It's a very good question that if we pose, the answer becomes there's absolutely nothing. All we have is a gift. It's God's gift. Our salvation is a gift. All all life is a gift, and it's also not only just God's gift, but also a contribution of other people. Because from our birth to days, our life is a contribution of thousands and thousands of people. In fact, there's nothing that we can do on our own. The knowledge we have is the knowledge we get by reading and learning from others. So understanding the giftedness of life contributes towards our understanding of gratitude and cultivating a heart of gratitude. The third foundation is the fact that the good has power, not evil. So as the Bible says, don't return evil to evil, but overcome evil by returning good. It demonstrates that the good has more power than evil. It's not evil which has power; it's good. So when we understand our giving primal place for the good, our thinking of the good, our perception of the good has actually power in changing the negatives in our life, then we become freer to express and practice gratitude. Based on these foundations, the definition of gratitude then becomes gratitude as an acknowledgement of the good. It's an acknowledgement of the good. So when you acknowledge the good, then what comes next becomes varies, because it can be verbal. You can say thank you. You can worship God. You notice the good that you have done in your life, the goodness that came to you. You worship, you adore Him, you express your gratitude towards Him. And also you notice the good in others, and your perception of them changes because you have seen the good in them, and that changes the relationship. You express your appreciation towards them, and you notice the good. It motivates you to do good, so you engage in doing the good. When we acknowledge the good of what our children are doing, that encourages them to continue to do good as well. So it's an acknowledgement of the good. Practicing gratitude brings a great deal of benefits to our well-being, to our in our relationship, in our mental health, in all aspects of our life, because the good acknowledged is the good promoted. When you acknowledge the good, you are actually promoting the good. So you notice the good in your workplace, in your family life. You engage in acknowledging those goods, then those goods starts to multiply in our life and in the life of others. And the good acknowledged is the good encouraged, and the good acknowledged is the good internalized. You know, when we focus on the negative and notice the negative, what it does is that it informs our mind, the way we think, the way we behave, and that affects our emotion, that affects our mental health, that affects the way we perceive other people, and that affects our behavior because we focus on the negative. The same way, when we acknowledge the good acknowledged helps us to internalize the good. And the more we internalize the good, the more we think about the goodness around us, then the way we relate with the world and others changes. It becomes more positive, we become more happier, more joyful, more perceiving the presence of God in all creation. And that gives us, it builds our faith and helps our relationship with it. So we should engage in practicing and implementing gratitude in our life. And as I said before, it's not an easy thing for us to practice gratitude. It's our default position is to focus on the negative. So it takes intentionality. We need to be intentional in noticing the good, even in the presence of the bad, because we are surrounded with goodness as much as we have evil things, bad things, and negative things in our surroundings. So be a thankful observer. Think about the good in the workplace. Even change your gossip into good. Gossip about the good things that's happening in other people's life. Make it intentional in highlighting and talking about the good. So when you come to in the evening, when you come back home from work or from wherever you have been, try to remember 3-4 things that you noticed in the day, to share it to your family, to share it over the phone to your friends, to talk about it on a dinner table, or write it down. Writing 3 things about it, just being intentional, but because you understand the benefit of cultivating the heart of gratitude. And as you do that, before you know it, it becomes part of your nature, part of the way you live your life, the way you practice with others. So it becomes your worldly view. You become actively engaged in acknowledging the good. As you do that, you are actually promoting the good, and that brings a better health, a better relationship, a better life with others as well as with God. I would like to see gratitude being understood for what it is. Gratitude is not just a transactional thing that we wait for somebody to do something for us and then we express our gratitude to. Or it's not just this toxic positivity that denies the reality of life. It is actually an acknowledgement of the good. It is a proactive engagement with life, acknowledging the good and expressing our gratitude towards it. And when you acknowledge the good, you are actually promoting the good. So the good acknowledged is the good promoted. And the good acknowledged is the good internalized. And when we acknowledge the good, we are actually consuming good news, the good that is. So that information gets in, affecting our hearts and our perceptions, the way and helping us to have a better relationship with ourselves, with others, and with our communities, and encouraging that relationship. So I want you to engage in practicing gratitude.